When the liberal crew of a supply ship came across a tiny dinghy filled with migrants, they unhesitantly rescued them and brought them aboard. However, they received a sinister wake-up call once their new guests repaid them with a dose of reality. While leftists often hold such progressive values out of misguided compassion and willful ignorance, there are far too many liberals who enact their political policies despite knowing the devastating results that follow. Hubristically virtue signaling and feigning empathy, these liberal activists consciously flood the West with immigrants who not only detest our values and culture but seek to topple our civilization through violent and oppressive tactics. With the recent election of conservative Minister of the Interior Matteo Salvini, Italy has taken a hard right turn, closing its borders to mass migration. Of course, liberal dissenters have continued smuggling in seafaring Muslim asylum seekers via NGO ships. Recently, these bleeding heart progressives were forced to face the same dangers they inflict upon their fellow citizens on a daily basis. When far-left crew members of an Italian supply ship came across a dinghy with 67 Muslim migrants in the Mediterranean, they immediately rescued them, instead of expressing their gratitude for being taken aboard by their liberal allies. The migrants commandeered the ship, taking the crew members hostage and threatening to slaughter them if they didn't illegally transport them to Italy. According to Italian newspaper Il Giornale, the Vothal, a specialist offshore supply ship, fell to piracy when at least 2 of the migrants became violent with the crew, forcing them to bring them to a Sicilian port in an effort to illegally enter Italy. Within minutes of rescuing the migrants, the crew was taken hostage by the very people they had allowed on their ship. Briat Bard confirms, "It turned from a rescue to piracy," commented the Italian Transport Ministry, stating that death threats were made. Libyan Coast Guard spokesman Admiral Al Qasim explained that shortly after the supply ship rescued the migrants, some became hostile at the sight of the Libyan Coast Guard boat Dishoti approaching to take the illegals to safety. The reported offenders are 2 migrant men from Ghana and Sudan. The migrants grew increasingly aggressive and threatened to kill the crew because they did not want to return to Libya in any way when they saw the boat, forcing it to head north. He added, "We did not want to do anything that could further degenerate the situation. Our priority was to ensure the safety of the crew and all the other people," Qasim told Italian journalist agency, adding he feared the incident could be the first of many migrant revolts to come. Despite threatening violence to get their way, all 67 migrants have been detained in Italy. Additionally, Italian Minister of the Interior Matteo Salvini revealed the nationalities of the invading migrants, not only proving that most are not refugees but also that they are bypassing countless safe countries for Europe. In fact, he referred to them as pirates and criminals, demanding that they are led off the ship in handcuffs. According to the Telegraph, "In quali questi pacica e la guerra?" Matteo Salvini, at Matteo Salvini, July 10, 2018, speaking in Innsbruck, where he was attending a meeting of EU interior ministers, Mr. Salvini said, "We are in no hurry to let them disembark. If it is shown that some of the migrants were violent, they will go to prison." Backing Salvini's stance, Italian Transport Minister Danilo Tonini expressed his support for a criminal investigation. Italian Transport Minister Danilo Tonini said he was proud of the country's Coast Guard for taking the migrants who were endangering the life of the Italian cruiser Vothal, writing on Twitter, "Now onwards with investigations to punish troublemakers." However, Salvini hit back at the open border leftists, vowing to fight for the deportation of tens of thousands of illegal migrants per year. Because of his hardline anti-illegal immigration stance, Salvini has caused his party's support to skyrocket. Italy has a backlog of 500,000 illegal immigrants, and if we don't manage to expel more than 10,000 a year, we'll take 50 years to make up for the past. Of the 67 migrants, 58 are men, only 3 are women and 6 are reportedly minors. Of course, liberals ignored this disturbing statistic to insist that at least the minors be granted asylum in Italy. "Those 6 children are not criminals and need to be allowed to disembark straight away," said Deborah Serracchiani, an MP from the center-left Democratic Party. What these leftist activists refuse to acknowledge is that not only are most of these migrants coming from non-refugee countries but also that the vast majority are men. In fact, Only recently has the number of adult male asylum seekers dipped below 70%, although they are still the majority at 58%, according to the UN Refugee Agency. This incident paints the perfect picture of the so-called refugee crisis, showcasing that the West has been duped into welcoming and invading enemies under the guise of poor, desperate refugees. The West is beginning to realize that the benevolence and tolerance it has extended to the world is being repaid with a cultural war. Western civilization is being relentlessly attacked from within, the only way it can be defeated. It's time for the people to abandon their abused compassion and protect their superior freedoms and values.